Hello, and thank you for listening. My name is Bryan Harned, host of the Plant Podcast. The Plant is brought to you by ThinManager Software, the global leader in thin client management and mobility solutions. ACP ThinManager was acquired by Rockwell Automation in September of 2016. Recently, I had a chance to sit down with Tom Jordan, marketing lead for Rockwell Automation, and ask a few questions about ThinManager, mobility, and new hardware specific to the Rockwell hardware ecosystem released for thin client work environments. Joining me today is Tom Jordan, the Vice President of Marketing for ThinManager Software. Hey, Tom.
How's it going, Brian?
It's going pretty good. Hey, so starting out, for those listening, why don't you tell us a little bit about your history with ThinManager and industrial automation?
Sure. So I've been working with the ThinManager product since day one. Initially, we released the product in 1999. The whole idea behind the thin client technology was we were system integrators at the time, and we had one particular large client that had a very harsh working environment with well over 350 PCs that we were responsible for, and taking care of them and keeping them up and running, keeping the OSs maintained and up to date, and virus patching, you name it. Whatever you have to do to take care of an OS, we were doing that times 350. Quite burdensome on the team. And so we started investigating the idea of switching to thin client hardware versus a traditional PC. The only problem was, in the early days, thin clients had to be managed at the terminal, just like PCs have to be managed at the terminal. And so we really didn't gain anything. And then one of the developers on the team said he wanted to write some code, see if he could develop a platform that we could manage the clients with. And that was really where ThinManager was born, was out of our own need and desire to begin to move our customers away from PC-centric technology and more to centralized thin client computing.
I can only imagine managing 350 PCs, having to replace them and image them, and traditional network administration work on those. That sounds like a nightmare.
Yeah, and of course, this was back in the days of slower network speeds, slower processing power on the PCs themselves. So you can imagine having to do that today, but imagine, 15 plus years ago, it was just a very slow and arduous process.
Yeah, we all loved Windows 95 too. I also wanted to just plug really quick for listeners who don't know a whole lot about ThinManager software and how the powerful capabilities of visualization that it offers, to check out thinmanager.com and just learn more and more. A lot of data you can soak up on that website. So the next thing I wanted to talk to you about is mobility on the plant floor and in a factory setting. Obviously, mobility is a big thing now with tablets and smartphones, and just the ability to be not tethered, not weighed down.
Sure.
Tom, when planning mobility for a factory environment, and we get this a lot, but can you walk us through some of the factors that customers need to think about before implementing and allowing mobile devices in their work environment, and kind of how ThinManager plays into that?
Sure. So from a ThinManager perspective, mobility wasn't our initial focus, but what happened is because of the way we were centralizing people's data and their content, and then allowing them to centrally manage that content, mobility was just kind of a natural progression, I guess, if you will, from thin client computing into mobile computing. If you've got your own smartphone, you realize the benefit of a client server type relationship. While some data lives on your phone, really most of that data is in a cloud somewhere, and it's updating you as you move throughout your day or do your task, so really mobility and centralization play well together, just like thin clients and centralization. So from our perspective, it was a natural extension of our own technology to allow for a mobile solution. Now, what a customer has to look for when they're determining this, the very first question they're going to have to determine is, are these BYOB, or BYOD rather, bring your own devices, or is this going to be a situation where the company provides the devices? Now, ThinManager supports either path you would want to go down there with our relevance product. However, most of our customers tend to be providing the devices to the workforce versus having them relying on using their own device. Of course, this is because of security reasons, network management, obviously managing the devices, making sure that they're being used for work purposes and not personal purposes. And so, from a thin client perspective, from a thin manager perspective, we kind of treat mobile devices as thin devices, and we do that by allowing you to install a client application on an Android or an Apple or even a Windows device. And then ThinManager can also push content to that mobile device. So, from our perspective, our mobility is a better solution than most. One, it's centralized the way mobility should be, but we also allow you to take enough control of that device to where that content being delivered from the plant floor and from the other plant floor computing stations is kept secure because it still all remains centralized and it's really only broadcast and viewed on the mobile devices that are managed by ThinManager versus data actually residing on those mobile devices for the workforce.
So, I mean, it essentially just makes it a thin client.
It really does. There's still a local OS that runs on the mobile devices that we manage. There are third-party tools if you wanted to, manage that particular OS. But there are built-in features. For instance, the Apple suite of tablets has a built-in feature where you can lock the user into a specific application. And so what we recommend to our customers is once you load our client app onto an Apple device, simply go into their settings and use their controls to lock the user into our ITMC app, for instance, and then all the other applications that are being pushed to the tablet are being pushed through ThinManager, and that control and security remains in the hands of the administrator, not the user of the end device.
Yeah, a lot more reason to provide those kind of tablets and mobile devices too, as opposed to letting somebody use their own.
That's right. And we take it a step further, Brian, in that, we are also managing the location of the devices that we manage. And so we add an extra step and an extra layer of data and information. Not only would you know what a particular tablet is running at any particular time, but with the Relevance product, you would actually probably know that user who is logged in at the time using that application and even their physical proximity in and on the plant floor, where they're actually doing the work that's happening on the tablet. And so again, we expand that a little bit. It's more than just using a mobile tablet. It's being able to track what a person's doing on a mobile tablet and restrict content and data delivery to certain areas within the plant. Let's face it, mobility is available everywhere in our personal lives. We expect that phone to update us all the time and provide us information all the time. Well, on the plant floor, we don't quite look at it that way. For instance, we don't want to take controls applications out of line of sight for a particular production line. No one should be able to go to the break room or the bathroom or the parking lot and have control of some kind of machinery or part of a process that they're no longer visually in front of or in proximity where they can view the process they're actually controlling.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. The Thin Manager in general works somewhat agnostically as far as thin clients go. They work with tons of thin clients out of the box. And for anybody who didn't know, we have an extensive knowledge base that you can actually see thin clients that are tested and either approved to work with Thin Manager or some that are even Thin Manager ready, which brings us to talk about a new thin client that was just released by Alan Bradley and Rockwell Automation, the VersaView 5200 series thin client. I was hoping you could tell us a little bit about this new product and just some of the options available for it.
Sure. Well, Rockwell currently has the VersaView 5200 as their base thin client. It is a diskless, fanless unit, as other industrial thin clients that are supported in the Thin Manager world. As you stated, Brian, we also support really hundreds of commercial thin client units out there, but the new Rockwell unit is what we would call an industrialized unit. The body has a built-in heat sink. The motherboard is sealed to keep particulate from getting on there to give it a longer life span on the plant floor. There is dual Ethernet and support for multiple monitors. We even support some of the new touch displays that are also available from Rockwell Automation. You can integrate those units directly in to the touch panel display or use them as just a box and hook it up to your own monitors that you may already have or your own configuration that you're planning. Separate from that. These thin clients are comparable to the other industrial units that are out there. course, with the name Allen Bradley and Rockwell on that unit, you'll know that compatibility is tested beyond most of the other thin client hardware units that are out there. And of course, Rockwell's going to stand behind and support its own hardware solution in addition to its software platform that runs those thin clients.
The VersaView is out of the box ThinManager Ready, correct?
That's correct, Brian. There are two different kinds of thin clients. That's probably one of the things we might want to leave as a parting thought. The commercial thin clients that are available from like Dell, Dell-Wise, Lenovo, iGel, hundreds of companies out there that make these products. We can boot those products with a Pixie boot process and have those run in a ThinManager environment. However, what we tend to recommend are what you just described, Brian, were the ThinManager Ready thin clients. And these are thin clients where we've already flashed the BIOS, and when these units boot on a ThinManager network, they're automatically going to find their thin server and either receive a pre-configured configuration that you've already made or be absolutely ready to receive a configuration that you can apply on the fly when that unit's powered up onto the ThinManager network.
That's cool. So basically, if one was to fail, or I mean, not, or you're replacing a pre-existing one, you can have that pre-configured. So as soon as you plug it in, it's just ready to go.
It's the number one selling feature of the whole ThinManager platform, Brian, the ability to replace a client when it does have trouble in about under 2 minutes. And the ThinManager Ready clients are certainly those kind. The VersaView 5200 is exactly that kind of thin client. If there is any trouble with the terminal, anyone who can unplug cables and plug cables back in can replace a down terminal in less than 2 minutes. And there's really no loss of data or anything that happens during that time because the client's really only providing visualization into the production environment. And so all your data and visualization will come right back up in the state that it was in when the client failed in the first place. And again, that low replacement time means less downtime, and that's one of the ways that ThinManager saves our customers money and keeps them up and running and in a state of profitability.
Oh, that's great. An IT dream, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
Well, Tom, thank you so much for your time today. That's going to do it for our episode today for the plant. I hope you can join us for the next episode we expect to release in December, and we will continue to bring you information about emerging automation technologies. Again, Tom, thank you so much. Tom's from the ThinManager team. Thank you for joining us today in our conversation.
Thank you, Brian.
And thanks everybody for listening.